There are a few fairly common ways to deploy printers. One possibility, if I'm in the print management console itself, I can expand the print server and I can look at all the printers on the server. Well, if I choose this Canon printer, one possibility is to deploy with group policy. I could actually browse my domain, and this would give me a list of all the group policy objects that have been created, and I could automatically have this printer written into any group policy object. Now, that's a possibility, but not extremely common. The most common way to deploy a printer is actually through group policy by directly configuring all the policy settings. The downside to doing it through here, there are a lot of minor settings that you may want to define that you just won't have an option to here. This just writes in that shared path into the group policy object. So to look at deploying this through group policy, I'm going to go back to Server Manager. In Server Manager, I'm going to choose Tools. Group Policy Management is in that list. And Group Policy Management, I'm going to expand my forest, my RTS networking. I'm going to expand my domains. I'm going to expand RTS networking. Now, I'm going to create a new group policy object. Now, since I'm in like a test environment here, I'm going to link this group policy object to the domain. So this would apply to every user, every computer in the domain. Most likely, in a real network, a production environment, you would have an organizational unit structure, and you would have this apply at an organizational unit, so certain users, certain computers would get a specific printer. But I'm going to create mine and link it at the domain level. So I'm going to select Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. And I'm going to name this GPO Printer Settings. I'm going to choose OK for that. Now this GPO is in the list. I'm going to right-click this Printer Settings and edit. When I edit this Printer Settings Group Policy object, under Computer Configuration, I'm going to expand Preferences. Under Preferences, I have Control Panel Settings. I want to move this bar over a bit so it's easier for you to see. But under Control Panel Settings, I have Printers. When I select Printers, I can right-click and I can add a new TCP/IP printer or a new local printer. Well, I'm going to add a new TCP/IP printer. When I select that, it gives me this action. So I could delete a printer if I had previously deployed a printer this way. I could create a new printer. I could update an existing printer. Well, I have not deployed one yet, so I want to create. So that'll be our action. I can enter the IP address of the printer itself. Well, I'm going to use the IP address 192.168.1.220. I could have specified a DNS host name. If I selected that, it would have let me choose a name instead of an IP address. I'm also going to enter the name of the local printer. I'm just going to name this Canon Floor 1. So that'll be the local name of the printer. The path, I'm going to just type in //lun-dc1/Canon. I could fill in the location. I could define a comment. All those would help a user if they were to search for this printer to be sure they selected the correct printer. I could define the port settings. Maybe the most important tab here, probably the most important, the Common tab. With this Common tab, item level targeting. If I select item level targeting and then choose this targeting button, I can select new item. And new item, I can say this printer I just defined is your printer if you are a member of a certain Active Directory group. Your operating system, I could say has to be Windows 10, 8.1, 7, whatever client OS we choose. I'll choose Windows 10. I could also define your IP address range. That is extremely useful. If I choose IP address range, I could enter a network. So I'm going to use 192.168.1.1 through 192.168.1.254. So I entered a full network range of IP addresses. Now, if the IP address of your computer is between that range, this will be your default printer. The beauty of this, if I'm in a network with different locations, every location would be a different IP network. I would simply specify the printer for every network I have in my organization. Then I would type in a start and end address for each location. So if my user travels, one day a week they're in Washington, one day a week they may be in Vancouver, one day a week they're in Albuquerque. With this, their default printer will change automatically as they move from one office to the next, simply because the IP address of their computer changes. Otherwise, the problem you run into is you set a default printer for a user's home office. When your user is not in the home office, that printer, they can't connect to it. It would be a lot of work to tell a user that travels frequently that every time they travel, they have to remember where they are, then set their default printer accordingly. This would completely eliminate the need for that. So this will be the most common method to deploy printers now.